I've always believed that when something doesn't make sense, it's usually because you're missing a piece of the puzzle. People love to jump to conclusions when they hear something strange or unsettling, but I've learned that sometimes, even when you think you've found the missing piece, it only makes things worse. What I'm about to share isn't something I like talking about. It's not some internet myth or a creepy story that got passed around on Reddit. It's something that actually happened to me, something that changed the way I look at people, at places, and honestly at the idea of normal life. It started a few years ago when I was living in a small town just outside of the city. I'd moved there to get some quiet, to reset after a few rough years. I found a cheap little apartment above a hardware store, the kind of place that smells like sawdust and old paint. It wasn't much, but it was mine. The rent was low, the neighbors mostly kept to themselves, and I thought I'd finally found somewhere peaceful. Back then, I worked nights at a gas station off the main highway, the kind of place where the coffee is always burnt, the lights hum just a little too loud, and the same handful of people come through every night. Truck drivers, insomniacs, the occasional teenager sneaking cigarettes. You start to recognize everyone after a while, and the nights start blending together. That's how it was for months, quiet, routine, almost comforting. Until the night things started to change. It was early autumn. I remember because the leaves had just started to turn, and every time I'd step outside for air, I could smell that sharp, earthy scent that comes right before the cold really sets in. My shift started at 10 p.m. and ended at 6 a.m., which meant I usually had the whole place to myself after midnight. That night began like any other. I stocked the shelves, wiped down the counter, and put on the little radio I kept behind the register. It was just me, the buzz of the lights, and the hum of the soda cooler. Around 1:30 a.m., I was refilling the coffee machine when I saw headlights pull into the lot. Nothing unusual, we got a few late-night customers. But when the car stopped, it didn't pull up to a pump. It just sat there, idling in the far corner of the parking lot with the lights still on. At first, I figured maybe someone was checking directions or making a phone call. A few minutes passed though and no one got out. I remember glancing at the security monitor. We had these old black and white cameras that barely worked, and seeing just a blur of headlights and shadows. After about 5 minutes, I stepped outside to toss some trash. That's when I noticed something that made my stomach twist. The car's engine was still running, but the driver's seat looked empty. I squinted, thinking maybe the glare from the lights was throwing me off, but no, there was no one behind the wheel. I stood there for a moment, listening to the engine hum, the cool night air brushing against my face. I called out, kind of half-jokingly, "You okay out there?" But of course no one answered. When I went back inside, I checked the cameras again, thinking maybe the person had stepped out and I just hadn't noticed. But the screen showed the same thing. A car sitting in the corner of the lot, engine on, lights on, no movement. I tried to shrug it off. People do weird things, especially at that hour. Maybe someone just ran inside the woods for a minute or something. But when I looked again about 10 minutes later, the car was gone. No sound of it leaving, no headlights pulling out, nothing. Just gone. It bothered me more than I wanted to admit. I even walked outside again, half expecting to see taillights disappearing down the road, but there was nothing. The lot was empty. That should have been the end of it, just one of those weird moments you forget about by morning. But 2 nights later, the same car came back. Same corner, same time, same thing, just sitting there, idling, no one inside. By the 3rd night, I started to feel this weird sense of dread as soon as my shift began. Like I was waiting for it to happen. And sure enough, around 1:30 a.m., those headlights rolled into view again. Only this time, something was different. The car didn't just sit there. After a few minutes, the engine cut off, and the headlights went dark. I couldn't see anything on the monitor anymore, just blackness. I leaned toward the screen, trying to make out any movement, but the static made it almost impossible. Then, just for a second, I thought I saw something near the back of the car. A shape. Maybe a person. But before I could get a better look, the screen flickered and went blank. The power didn't go out, just that one camera feed. I went cold all over. I thought maybe it was a glitch, but something deep down told me it wasn't. For the rest of the night, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. Every creak, every flicker of light made me jump. When I finally stepped outside at dawn, the car was gone again, and the camera feed started working like nothing had ever happened. I didn't tell anyone. It sounded too strange to explain, and I didn't want my boss thinking I was seeing things. But from that night on, I started noticing small things, things that didn't add up. Sometimes I'd find the door chime ringing even though no one had come in. Other times, I'd hear the sound of footsteps around the back of the building, but when I checked, there was nothing there. Then one night, I found something on the counter when I came back from taking out the trash. A small key. I didn't recognize it. It was old, brass, a little tarnished and cold to the touch. No note, no explanation, just sitting there like someone had left it for me. That's when I started keeping a small notebook under the counter, just to write things down to make sure I wasn't losing it. Every time something strange happened, I'd jot down the time and what I saw. Over the next week, that notebook filled faster than I expected. The car came back 4 more times. Always between 1:15 and 1:45. Always in the same spot. But now, I started noticing something else. Each time it parked a few feet closer to the building. By the 5th night, it was right outside the front window. And that's when I saw someone inside. Not clearly, just a shadow behind the glass. But whoever it was, they were staring right at me. I froze. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I don't know how long I stood there, just staring back, too afraid to move. Then, just like before, the headlights flicked off and the figure was gone. When I finally found the courage to step outside, the car had vanished again. But on the ground where it had been, there was something small glinting under the streetlight. Another key that I picked it up without even thinking, turning it over in my hand like maybe it would tell me something just by touch. It was nearly identical to the first one, old, brass, maybe an inch long, except this one had a tiny number etched on the back, 7. I don't know why, but that number sent a chill through me. There was no reason it should have, it was just a number, but it felt personal, like it meant something I hadn't figured out yet. When I got home that morning, I put both keys on my kitchen table and stared at them for a long time. They didn't fit any locks I owned. They didn't match the station's doors, the cabinets, or even the old safe under the counter. I tried all of them just to be sure. Nothing. I told myself maybe someone was messing with me, maybe one of the drivers who came in late had noticed I worked alone and thought it'd be funny. But that didn't sit right either. Nobody ever stuck around long enough to play games like that. Over the next few nights, things only got stranger. The same car would appear, not every night but often enough that I started watching for it. And every time it showed up, I'd find another key somewhere nearby. Once on the counter. Once behind the register. Once on the hood of my own car. Each one had a number carved into the back. 7, 8, 9, 10. Always in order. At first, I thought maybe someone was leaving them for me to find, some weird scavenger hunt or prank. But as the days passed, it stopped feeling like a joke. It started feeling like a warning. There was one night I'll never forget. It was raining hard, that kind of cold, steady rain that soaks through your jacket the second you step outside. Business was dead. Not a single customer for hours. Around 2 a.m., I was sweeping near the front door when I saw something through the glass. A figure. Standing just beyond the glow of the lights. At first, I thought it might be someone waiting for the rain to let up, so I opened the door a little and called out, "Hey, we're open if you need to come in." But the person didn't move. They just stood there, still as a statue. I could barely make out any details. The rain distorted everything, but it looked like they were wearing dark clothes, maybe a hood. I could tell by their posture that they were facing me, but I couldn't see a face. I hesitated for a second, then stepped outside, keeping the door open behind me. The cold hit me like a wall. "Hey," I said again, raising my voice a bit over the rain. "You okay?" Nothing. The figure didn't flinch, didn't turn, didn't make a sound. And then, just as I was about to take another step forward, the power flickered inside the station. The lights cut out for maybe half a second, and when they came back on, the person was gone. I swear I didn't even blink. 1 second they were there and the next they weren't. I ran out to the lot, scanning the area, but the only thing I saw was that same car again, parked in the corner, engine idling. I wanted to believe someone had just moved from one place to another, that maybe it was all some weird coincidence. But deep down I knew it wasn't. When I went back inside, the security cameras were frozen. Every feed was stuck on the same frame, me standing outside the door, staring into the rain. I didn't sleep that morning when I got home. I didn't even turn off the lights. That's when I started hearing the knocking. The first time it happened, it was around 3 a.m., my night off. I was lying in bed, trying to convince myself I wasn't going crazy, when I heard it, 3 slow, steady knocks at my apartment door. I froze. I don't get visitors, especially not that late. I waited, holding my breath, hoping whoever it was would go away. After a minute, I worked up the courage to peek through the peephole. No one was there. But something was on the floor just outside my door. Another key. This one was different. Heavier. The number on the back was 11. I didn't touch it at first. I just stood there, staring at it, trying to make sense of any of this. Then I realized something else. My door had 3 deadbolts, but only 2 of them were locked. I always locked all 3. Always. I told myself maybe I just forgot, maybe I was tired, but it didn't feel right. Nothing about this felt right anymore. For the next week, I barely left my apartment except to go to work. And when I did, I kept the keys in a drawer locked away. I didn't want to look at them. I didn't want to think about them. But I couldn't escape it. Every night around the same time that car kept showing up. Sometimes it just idled there. Other times, it would pull up right in front of the glass like it wanted me to see it. And every time I'd feel that same sensation, like someone was watching me. Not from inside the car but from somewhere else. Then came the night everything came together, the night I stopped pretending it was all in my head. It was a Friday. I remember because Fridays were the slowest shifts. Nobody wanted to stop at a gas station that late when they could already be home. Around 1:45, I went out back to take the trash to the dumpster. The rain had stopped but the air was thick with fog, heavy, quiet, almost muffled. I pushed the dumpster lid open, tossed the bag inside and turned to head back. That's when I saw it. A small metal box sitting on the ground behind the dumpster. It was about the size of a lunchbox, old and dented, with a simple latch on the front. I hesitated but curiosity got the better of me. When I flipped the latch open, my breath caught in my throat. Inside were all the keys I'd found, every single one of them. I hadn't brought them here. I kept them locked in my apartment. But they were all there, neatly lined up inside that box from number 7 to 11. And under them, taped to the bottom, was a folded piece of paper. It had one word written on it, midnight. I don't know what made me do it, but I kept the box. I brought it inside and put it under the counter. Maybe part of me wanted to understand, or maybe I was just too scared to leave it there. Midnight came, and for the first time since this all began, I was waiting for whatever was going to happen. When the clock hit 12, nothing happened right away. The radio hummed softly. The lights flickered once. And then the phone rang. Not my cell phone, the landline behind the counter. The one that almost never rings. I picked it up slowly, my hand shaking. Hello? No one answered. But I could hear something, faint breathing like someone was on the line listening. Who is this? I said. Is this some kind of joke? Still nothing. Just breathing. Then, after what felt like forever, a voice finally spoke. Low, raspy, almost whispering. Check the door. The line went dead. I froze. The front door was locked. I checked it a dozen times that night. But when I looked toward it, my stomach dropped. Through the glass, I could see the outline of a figure standing just outside. Perfectly still. And hanging from the handle of the door, swinging gently in the draft from the vent, was another key that I don't think I've ever felt fear like that before. Not the kind you see in movies where someone screams and runs. This was the quiet, bone-deep fear that freezes you in place, makes your stomach turn, and fills your chest so tight you can barely breathe. I stared at the key for what felt like hours. It swung slowly, catching the dim light from the overhead sign outside. The figure didn't move. Just stood there. Watching. Waiting. I wanted to call the police, but even in my panic, I knew they'd probably laugh or worse, think I was imagining it. And besides the key, it wasn't just a key. I could feel it, heavy, ominous, like it carried something more than metal and brass. I reached for it, my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped the receiver. But before I could touch the key, the figure stepped back, just a single step, and vanished. I blinked, thinking maybe it was the reflection of the streetlight or maybe I'd misjudged the angle. But when I checked the camera feed, the footage was gone. Every camera in the store was dead. Black. I stayed behind the counter for the rest of the night, clutching the phone like a lifeline. I didn't move. I didn't look outside again. And when the sun finally started creeping over the horizon, I opened the door slowly, half expecting the figure to still be there. Nothing. Not a trace. Just the key lying on the floor like it had been waiting for me all night. I picked it up and put it in my pocket, and I remember thinking, I have to know what this means. I have to find out why this is happening. But deep down, I already knew that curiosity would be dangerous. The next few days passed in a blur. I didn't sleep much. I barely left the apartment. I carried the keys with me everywhere, lining them up on my dresser at night, tracing the numbers with my fingers. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. They didn't make sense, but the sequence felt important. And then one evening I made a mistake. I got careless. I left the keys in my pocket when I went to work. I figured the car wouldn't show up if I wasn't expecting it, but I was wrong. Around 1:30 a.m., just like always, the headlights appeared. I froze, staring out the window. The car idled in its usual spot, but this time the engine wasn't running. The quiet was worse than the hum of the engine, oppressive, unnatural. I grabbed the keys out of my pocket. I didn't know why I did it, but I felt compelled. I had to try something. Maybe the keys were a test. Maybe they were a warning. Or maybe they were the only way to end this. I stepped outside, holding them tightly. The car didn't move. I walked slowly toward it, my steps echoing in the empty lot. And then I saw movement in the corner of my eye, just a flicker. A shadow darting behind the dumpster. I spun around, heart hammering, but there was nothing. When I looked back at the car, the driver's seat was empty. But on the passenger side something caught my eye. A figure slouched over, face hidden in shadow. I froze. My fingers clenched the keys like a lifeline. I tried to tell myself it was just a mannequin or maybe someone hiding. But the figure shifted slightly, just enough for me to see a hand. Pale, thin, unnatural. Then the door of the car slowly creaked open. I don't remember thinking. I don't remember moving. I just ran. I didn't stop until I was back inside the store, slamming the door behind me. My chest burned. My hands shook. The keys had fallen to the floor, clattering loudly, and I barely noticed. I could hear the engine start. A low, deliberate hum. And then the car drove away, slowly, carefully, as if it wanted me to watch it leave. I stayed behind the counter for hours, too afraid to move. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't even think straight. All I could do was stare at the keys on the floor, knowing that whatever was happening, it wasn't over. I started noticing small things after that night. Things that didn't make sense. A door left unlocked that I was sure I'd locked. A shadow flicking across my window at odd hours. A whisper I couldn't identify, barely audible but just enough to make me jump. I realized then that this wasn't just about the keys or the car or the figure. It was about control. Whoever, or whatever, was behind it, they wanted me to notice, to feel fear, to know that I was being watched. And that's when the phone rang again. Not the landline this time. My cell phone. The screen was blank, but a single number was flashing. An unknown caller. I almost didn't answer. Everything in me screamed not to. But something compelled me. I swiped and the line connected. Check the dumpster, the voice whispered again. It was the same raspy, low voice. The one from before. My stomach turned. I wanted to hang up. I wanted to ignore it. But I didn't. I couldn't. By the time I reached the dumpster, I was shaking so badly I could barely see straight. And when I looked, there it was. A key. Bigger than all the others. Number 12 carved into it. And beneath it, a folded piece of paper. This time the paper had an address. Not far, just a few blocks from the gas station. A house I'd never noticed before. I don't know why, but I felt like I had no choice. I had to go there. I had to find out what all of this meant. I grabbed my coat, stuffed the keys into my pocket, and stepped out into the night. Every shadow seemed alive. Every sound made me jump. And the closer I got to the address, the heavier the air felt, like someone was pressing down on me, warning me to turn back. But I didn't. I couldn't. By the time I reached the house, I was trembling, sweating, heart pounding in my ears. It was dark, old, and looked abandoned. Windows boarded up, the paint peeling, the kind of place people avoid after sunset. I stood on the porch, staring at the door, trying to convince myself to leave. Then I noticed something carved into the wood. A number. 12. My hand went to my pocket where the key was. I was about to insert it into the lock, when I heard a voice behind me. A whisper, soft and deliberate. You shouldn't have come alone. I froze. The night went silent. Too silent. And that's where I have to stop for now, because what happened next is something I still can't fully explain. Something that changed the way I see the world, the way I see myself. I only know one thing. Once you start down a path like this, once you follow the signs, there's no turning back. That I stood frozen on the porch, heart hammering in my chest. My fingers grazed the key in my pocket as if touching it would somehow anchor me to reality. The wind whispered through the cracked shutters, carrying a chill that wasn't just from the night air. It felt alive, like it had a purpose. I wanted to turn around. I wanted to run back to the gas station, back to my safe, ordinary life. But something deep inside me, curiosity? Stubbornness? Kept my feet rooted to the rotting wooden boards beneath me. The door in front of me was solid, heavy, and old. The number 12 carved into the wood seemed to pulse in the dim light from the street lamp. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the key, the metal cold against my skin, and a shiver ran down my spine that I hesitated. 1 second. 2 seconds. My whole body screamed to stop. And yet, my hand moved forward, almost on its own. I inserted the key into the lock. It turned with a reluctant click. The door creaked open slowly, the sound stretching into eternity. The air inside smelled musty, old, like decades of dust and secrets had been trapped behind these walls. I stepped inside, my senses on high alert, every nerve on fire. The interior was dark. Darker than I expected, as if the house had swallowed the light from the street lamps outside. My eyes strained, but the shadows moved strangely, shifting, stretching, almost as if the house itself were breathing. I set my keys down on a small wooden table in the entryway. That's when I noticed it. A faint, almost imperceptible trail of dust leading deeper into the house, as if someone, or something, had just passed through. I followed it cautiously, each creak of the floorboards under my feet echoing like gunshots in the silence. My heart pounded with each step. Every corner, every doorway seemed to whisper, telling me to turn back. Then I saw something that made my stomach drop. I swallowed hard. My hand trembled as I traced the numbers with my fingers. The house felt alive, watching me, waiting for me to make a move. And then I heard it. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate. Not mine. Someone, or something, was moving in the house with me. I froze. My heart hammered so hard I thought it might burst. The footsteps stopped. Silence. Then a whisper, barely audible, carried through the darkness. You've come far, but you shouldn't be here. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream. But something kept me rooted in place, as if my body were no longer my own. The whisper repeated, closer this time, like it was right behind me. Don't turn around. I didn't. I couldn't. My head spun, my mind racing, trying to make sense of any of this. Was this a prank? A hallucination? Or something else entirely? Then I felt it, a cold presence brushing past my shoulder. Not a wind, not a shadow, but something tangible, alive, deliberate. I could feel its gaze, heavy, piercing, as if it could see into my very soul. I stumbled forward, almost tripping over the table, and the whisper came again. The keys, they belong to you now. I froze. What did that mean? Belong to me? Was I supposed to do something with them? Was this some kind of test? Before I could process it, the door behind me slammed shut with a deafening bang. I spun around, heart hammering, but it was locked, solid, unyielding, impossible to open. Then, from somewhere deeper in the house, I heard the sound of footsteps again. Slow, measured, approaching. And this time I saw it, a shadow moving just beyond the faint glow of moonlight coming through a cracked window. It wasn't human. Not completely. The shape was vaguely humanoid, but it moved in ways no person could. Its limbs stretched and bent unnaturally, shadows flickering over the walls as it came closer. I backed up slowly, clutching the keys in my hand, realizing with a sinking dread that I had no idea what I had walked into. My rational mind screamed at me to run, but the house seemed to expand around me, every step forward swallowed by darkness. And then it stopped. Silence. Heavy. Crushing. I could hear my own breathing, ragged, uneven, as I tried to make sense of what was happening. And then, a whisper again, this time right in my ear, though no one was there. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and now, you. I screamed, stumbling backward, and the shadows around me seemed to surge, closing in like a living tide. My hands went to my mouth, trying to stifle the panic, but it was no use. I could feel it, the house, the keys, whatever had been following me for weeks. It was all connected, and it was waiting for me to understand. I don't know how long I stood there. Minutes, hours, maybe seconds. Time didn't feel real anymore. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, the shadows retreated. The house was still. Empty. Quiet. I didn't stay to question it. I ran. Out of the house, into the foggy night, keys clutched tightly in my hand. I didn't look back. I didn't stop running until I reached the gas station parking lot. The headlights weren't there, the car was gone, and for the first time in weeks I could breathe again. But I knew it wasn't over. I had the keys. I had seen the house. I had felt the presence. And something deep inside me knew that the next time it came, whatever it was, I wouldn't be able to run. I locked the keys away that night, buried them in a box under my bed. I told myself I'd never go back to that house. I told myself I'd forget the whispers, the shadows, the sequence of numbers that had haunted me for weeks. But sometimes, late at night, when the world is quiet and the air feels heavy, I swear I can hear the footsteps again. Slow, deliberate, always counting. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And I know that one day I'll have to go back. Because some things don't let you walk away. Things don't stop until you face them. And the first story, the one that changed everything, is waiting. I couldn't sleep that night, not even a wink. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the shadows in that house, felt the cold presence brushing past me, heard the whispers counting off the numbers again. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Even in the safety of my apartment, I felt watched, like the walls themselves were alive. I tried to tell myself it was just my imagination. I was exhausted, paranoid from the lack of sleep, maybe letting the stress of work and life twist things in my mind. But deep down I knew this was different. This was real. Whatever had been following me, leaving keys in impossible places, sending me to that house, it wasn't done yet. During the day I tried to act normal. I went to the gas station like nothing had happened. I even joked with a few regulars, trying to laugh off the tension I felt inside. But the fear didn't leave me. I started noticing little things: a shadow crossing the lot when no one was there, the faint sound of something scraping against the dumpster outside, and the radio picking up static when there shouldn't have been any. It was like the night had followed me into the day, seeping into every corner of my life. I thought about the keys constantly. I lined them up on my dresser again, tracing the numbers with my fingers, trying to find some logic in the sequence. 7 through 12, each one heavier than the last, each one pulling me deeper into whatever this was. I couldn't stop thinking about the house either, with its dark, breathing shadows, the carved numbers on the walls, the feeling of being watched the moment I stepped inside. The house had a presence, I realized, something alive, patient, waiting for me to come back. It wasn't a place you stumbled into by accident. The way it had drawn me there, guided me through the keys, was deliberate. Every step I had taken, every key I had found, was part of a plan. I didn't know whose plan or why, but I knew one thing: I wasn't ready for it. I tried to talk to someone about it. A friend, a coworker, anyone who might understand. But when I told them the story, even just the basics, the car, the keys, the house, they laughed. They said I was overworked, seeing things. I wanted to believe them. I really did. But the voice on the phone, the footsteps behind me, the feeling of being followed, none of that was in my head. I knew it. And now that I had the keys, I felt like I was part of something I didn't understand. Something bigger than me. Work became a blur. Every night, I dreaded my shift, my nerves stretched thin, always listening for the sound of the headlights, the subtle hum of the car's engine, or the whisper of a voice I couldn't quite place. Some nights, I would arrive at the gas station and everything would be normal. Empty lot, humming lights, quiet night. And then, without warning, the car would appear. Always the same, always at the same time, always silent, watching. I started keeping a journal, writing down everything. The times, the movements, every detail I could remember. It was the only way I could convince myself I wasn't losing my mind. Looking back on those entries now, I can see the way the fear slowly became part of me. How every small, unexplainable thing began to feel like a sign. The way the keys seemed to weigh heavier in my pocket each day, like they were growing, like the house and the presence it held were reaching through them, touching me even when I wasn't there. Then one evening, I noticed something that changed everything. I was on my way back from the convenience store, carrying a few groceries, when I passed an alley I'd never paid much attention to before. Something glimmered at the far end. Curious, I walked closer and saw a small brass key lying in the dirt. My stomach tightened. I picked it up. It was unnumbered, unlike the others, and a chill ran down my spine. I could almost hear it humming in my hand like it was alive. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I laid the key next to the box under my bed and stared at it for hours. Something about it felt different, more urgent, more deliberate. Like it wasn't just a key, it was a message. I didn't know from whom or what, but I knew it was related to the house. I started digging into the history of the town, trying to find anything that could explain what I was experiencing. Old newspaper clippings, online archives, even the local library's records. That's when I stumbled across a story I hadn't seen before. A series of disappearances spanning decades. People who had vanished without a trace, often last seen near abandoned houses on the outskirts of town. One of the locations listed matched the address on the paper from the key. My hands shook as I read, realizing the house wasn't just a random old building. It had a history. A dark history. I tried to tell myself it didn't mean anything, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the house, the keys, and whatever had been following me were connected to something far bigger than I had imagined. Every time I looked at the keys, the numbers 7 through 12 stared back at me, demanding answers I didn't have. Work became unbearable. I started noticing strange patterns with the customers who came in late at night. Certain people would linger longer than necessary, glancing toward the lot as if they were expecting something. Trucks parked just out of the camera's reach, men in hooded jackets standing silently near the pumps. I tried to ignore it, but my instincts told me these people, or maybe shadows of people, were linked to what was happening. One night, while I was closing up, I heard footsteps outside that didn't match my usual routine. I peeked through the window and saw a figure standing across the street, barely visible in the dim light. They weren't moving. Just standing, staring. My breath caught in my throat. I wanted to run inside, hide, but something compelled me to watch. The figure raised a hand, slow and deliberate as if signaling me. Then, without warning, they vanished into the fog. The next morning, another key appeared, This one tucked neatly under the windshield wiper of my car. Number 13. I didn't even know there were 13 keys. I picked it up carefully, noting how heavier it felt than the others, how the metal seemed to absorb the light. I shoved it into my pocket, my hands trembling. The house was pulling me deeper into its world, and I had no idea what it wanted from me. That same day I received a call. No number, no caller ID. I answered cautiously. A raspy whisper came through the line. "They're watching. Don't trust the lights." Then silence. I dropped the phone, heart racing. Who were they? And what did it mean by the lights? Was it referring to the streetlights outside, the fluorescent glow in my apartment, or something else entirely? I began noticing more unusual things at night. Flickers of movement outside my windows, lights turning on and off without explanation, shadows stretching across the walls in impossible angles. It wasn't just the house or the car anymore. Whatever was following me had begun to infiltrate my life. My apartment, once a safe space, now felt like a trap. I confided in one friend, someone I trusted more than anyone. I tried to explain it all, the car, the keys, the house, the whispers, the shadows, and their reaction was mixed between concern and disbelief. But they did agree to help me investigate cautiously. We planned a visit to the house, but I couldn't shake the feeling that going there would change everything. That the moment I stepped inside again, I would cross a line I couldn't come back from. In the meantime, I began exploring other angles, trying to understand the keys themselves. Each key had a number, but their origin was a mystery. I thought about the possibility of a game, a test, or a warning. Maybe the house was a trap or a gateway or something that used these keys to reach me. Maybe the sequence 7 through 13 had meaning beyond mere order. I started keeping a detailed log of everything. The keys, their numbers, the times they appeared, any patterns in the car's behavior, any whispers I heard. The more I recorded, the more I realized how intricately everything was connected. The tension in my life grew unbearable. I became hyper-aware of every sound and shadow. I would wake up at 3 in the morning, convinced I heard whispers in my apartment, only to find nothing. But the unease lingered. Something was always there, just out of sight, always waiting. And the keys, each one more menacing than the last, reminded me that I had already been chosen for something I didn't understand. Then, a new twist. I started noticing small, seemingly insignificant items moving around in my apartment. A pen I left on the counter would be on the floor the next morning. A coffee mug would be turned upside down. Nothing drastic, nothing threatening, just subtle, unnerving signs that I wasn't alone. Every time it happened, a sinking feeling filled my chest. The house, the car, the presence following me, it wasn't just confined to one place anymore. It was in my life, in my space, in my mind. I started thinking about why I had been targeted. Why me? Was it random, or had I stumbled across something in the past that triggered it? I couldn't remember anything specific, nothing that made sense. And yet, the way the keys appeared, the way the house called me back, it felt deliberate, purposeful. Like I had been chosen for something I didn't understand. I tried to find meaning in the numbers, the sequence, the order of the keys. 7 through 13. Could it be dates? Could it be locations? Could it be steps in a ritual? My rational mind refused to accept the supernatural explanations creeping into my thoughts, but the evidence was overwhelming. Something beyond normal human understanding was at work, and I was caught in the middle of it. Every decision now carried weight. Every step I took, every glance outside, every sound in the night could have consequences. And with each passing day the tension grew, the unseen presence pressing closer, more insistent. The house was no longer a distant threat. It was a living entity pulling me forward, demanding that I follow the path it had set before me. And deep down, I knew the first major encounter was coming. Something unavoidable. Something that would force me to confront whatever was orchestrating all of this. The keys were leading me toward it. The house was calling. And I couldn't ignore it any longer. The days blurred together, each one heavier than the last. I couldn't focus at work, couldn't sleep, couldn't even think straight. Every time I tried to push the house and the keys out of my mind, some small, impossible thing would pull me back in. A shadow moving in the corner of my eye, the faint sound of someone breathing when I was alone, the hum of the car's engine at times when it shouldn't even exist. One night, I was sifting through the journal I'd been keeping, looking for patterns, anything that might make sense of the chaos, when I noticed something I hadn't seen before. In the corner of one page, scrawled faintly in pencil, were numbers that didn't match the keys I had collected. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. My stomach dropped. I didn't remember writing these. I was sure of it. But the sequence seemed deliberate, as if it were a countdown, and it was pointing backward from something I couldn't yet see. I tried to shake it off. Maybe I had been too tired, too paranoid. Maybe someone had broken into my apartment. But nothing had been disturbed, except for the keys. Every single key lined up neatly on my dresser had shifted slightly as if moved by invisible hands. That was when the knock came. 3 slow, deliberate knocks on my apartment door. My heart sank. I didn't move at first, frozen with fear. But then a thought struck me: whoever, or whatever, had been orchestrating this wanted me to face something. The house, the car, the keys, the whispers, it was all leading to a confrontation. I opened the door slowly and nothing was there. But on the floor, staring up at me like it belonged, was a key unlike any I had seen before. Dark, almost black, with the number 0 etched into it. My hands trembled as I picked it up. The moment I touched it, a cold shiver ran up my arm like ice crawling beneath my skin. And then I noticed the note attached: Start. Start? Start what? The sequence had already been established. 7 through 13. Had the countdown been leading to this moment all along? The key felt heavier than any of the others, almost alive. I couldn't stop staring at it, my mind spinning with possibilities. I had no choice but to follow the trail. I grabbed the keys, the journal, and the note and set out for the house again. The fog that night was thick, swallowing the street lights, masking familiar landmarks. Each step toward the old house made my chest tighten, each breath cold and shallow. The sense of being watched was stronger than ever, wrapping around me like invisible chains. When I reached the house, I noticed something had changed. The windows, once dark and lifeless, now had a faint glow, like candlelight flickering inside. The air around it felt heavier, thicker, almost tangible. I could hear faint sounds, whispers, creaks, and something deeper, low and resonant, like the house itself was breathing. I stepped inside. The door closed behind me with a slam that made my heart leap. The keys in my hand felt warm, pulsing in a strange rhythm. I followed the sequence I had traced earlier, moving through the house, past the rooms I had explored before. And that's when I saw it, a second plot twist I couldn't have predicted. In the corner of the main hall, partially hidden by shadows, was a mirror. At first, I didn't notice anything unusual. But then I realized, the reflection didn't match reality. The house was empty, but the reflection in the glass showed someone else. Someone standing behind me. I whipped around. Nothing. The air was empty, the room silent. But the mirror still showed the figure, hunched and faceless, reaching toward me with hands I didn't recognize. Panic surged through me, but the keys in my hand seemed to vibrate with urgency, almost guiding me forward. The countdown in my journal came rushing back to me: 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I realized the figure in the mirror wasn't real in the conventional sense. It was a message, a warning, a threat. Something was trying to communicate through the reflection, to manipulate me, to test me. I pressed forward into the deepest part of the house, the glow from the broken windows growing stronger. And then I saw it, a doorway that hadn't been there before, dark and foreboding, carved into the wall like a secret waiting to be discovered. On the floor in front of it lay another key, a 14th one, unnumbered, twisted and jagged, blacker than the others. I could feel its weight pressing down, almost demanding that I take it. The second plot twist hit me like a blow. The house wasn't just a place. It wasn't just a trap. It was alive and it was aware of me. Every step I had taken, every key I had found, had been orchestrated to bring me here. And now it was offering me a choice, to go further or to turn back. The sense of danger was palpable, almost suffocating, but I couldn't leave. Curiosity, fear, and the unshakable sense that I had been chosen all pulled me forward. I picked up the jagged key and the moment I did, the room shifted. The walls seemed to breathe, the floorboards groaning under invisible weight. Whispers swirled around me, unintelligible but urgent. The reflection in the mirror changed. No longer just a faceless figure, it now mirrored me, or maybe mocked me, twisting my own movements in ways I couldn't control. It was then I realized the main conflict had escalated beyond anything I had imagined. The keys weren't just leading me somewhere. They were a test of will, a confrontation with the house itself. Every fear I had felt, every whisper, every shadow, had been preparing me for this moment. The house had been patient, guiding me carefully, and now it was drawing a line. Move forward or be consumed by the uncertainty it had created. I took a deep breath, clutching all the keys, and stepped toward the doorway. The air inside was thick, almost solid, and I could feel a presence pressing against me from every direction. Shadows stretched and twisted across the walls, moving with a life of their own. And the whispers, louder now, urgent, almost shouting, filled my head, demanding I listen. Something in me knew that crossing that threshold would change everything. I didn't know if I would survive, if I would understand, or if I would even return. But the sequence of keys, the house, the mirrors, the reflections, all of it was part of something bigger, something I couldn't ignore. And then the whisper came again, chillingly clear this time, "It's not just the house anymore." I froze. My hands tightened on the keys. My breath caught. I didn't understand what it meant, but I felt the weight of it, heavy and undeniable. Whatever force I was facing was no longer confined to the walls of the house. It had followed me into my life, into my world. And I realized, with a sinking certainty, that the stakes had never been higher.